After more than a decade of paying their dues on the road, 9 studio albums of mixed success, and 11 singles that mostly struggled on the Hot 100, this classic rock band was way overdue for their big break. As luck would have it, they entered the 80s just as a new sound was storming the airwaves. They finally figured out what listeners were really looking for. Led by a semi-risqué #1 hit, punctuated with some of the catchiest pop hooks known to the 80s. It enabled this band to finally break through years after battling it out on the charts. It was so popular, I actually sang it in church as a 7-year-old kid accidentally. I got in huge trouble. The story of this song is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Tell you what, if you want to learn the real stories of rock and roll's best songs from the very artists who wrote them, created them, this channel is definitely made for you. Subscribe right now below, ring the bell, become the trivia expert. A lot of cool facts here. Also, Patreon is calling your name. Come be a part of our VIP section by clicking on the Patreon link below. Help us keep this rock and roll marathon going. So I'm excited to return to one of my favorite shows on this channel. It's called Breakthrough. We haven't done one of these in a while. This is the show where we break down songs, albums, or events that kicked open the door to an artist or band's career. On previous episodes, we've covered breakthrough songs by Huey Lewis and the News, The Cure, and also the Pet Shop Boys, amongst others. Today, we're going to tell the story behind the J Geils Band and their 1981 #1 smash, Centerfold. Now, the J Geils Band has quite the history. They first came together in 1968 after charismatic singer Peter Wolf and drummer Stephen Joe Blatt. They teamed up with a Boston-based trio called the J Geils Blues Band, named after its guitarist John Warren Geils Jr., of course known professionally as J Geils. The two others in the band at the time were harmonic extraordinaire Magic Dick and bassist Danny Klein. And soon after, the group dropped blues from its name and they added keyboardist Seth Justman as well. Although it would take some persistence on his part, by the time Seth had moved to Boston, he had already been in several rock bands. His first night there, he caught a show by the J Geils crew. Said Justman about it, "I really thought that if I could jam with them, they'd let me join. So I approached Jay and I asked him if I could play with the band. However, they weren't interested in Seth, actually. And after 3 months of calls and following the band to nearly every one of their gigs, they finally gave in and they made Seth a permanent part of this lineup." Their first 2 albums established a tough, raw R&B sound which invited comparisons to the Butterfield Blues Band. They also had their first Hot 100 hit with the #39 single, Looking for a Love. Their third album, 1973's Bloodshot, that went gold in the US and it introduced the band to a much wider audience. Several more albums followed throughout the 70s. 1977's Monkey Island would be the band's last collaboration with Atlantic Records. "It was a turning point for us," said Justman. "We were at the end of our contract with Atlantic and we didn't know what was going to happen next, so we said, if we're going out breaking some new ground." Three singles were issued from Monkey Island, but only one broke the Hot 100. After finishing their contract with Atlantic, they signed with EMI America. That happened in 1978. And they then released their 8th studio album called Sanctuary. Just one last kiss before I walk out. Seth Justman then took over the production reins for their next album, 1980's Love Stinks. However, the famous title track, it still only reached number 38 on the Hot 100, although it would make a big appearance in the movie The Wedding Singer. Pretty funny. The potential hinted at by Love Stinks was fully realized with their next album, Freeze Frame. It was released on October 26, 1981. Freeze Frame was the J Geils Band big-time breakthrough, ascending to #1 on the Billboard album charts. Spent 4 weeks at #1, and actually stayed on the chart for a total of 70 weeks. Once again produced by keyboardist Seth Justman, Freeze Frame was, as he said, it's like looking at freeze frames of a life, watching where you've been while you're moving forward. We felt it really encapsulated what we were doing, and I know we were feeling like we could do anything. So the album was tempered with a touch of new wave pop, and that seems to be what really did the trick. Angel in blue. Freeze Frame offered up a new, sleeker sound. It was still good time rock and roll, really at its core, but the gloss and the synth and the big pop hooks made all the difference. Clearly alluding to the demise of disco, Peter Wolf said, there was a rediscovery. People were hungry for rock and roll bands. People wanted new, funky, sweaty rock and roll. The clubs that had been discos, they started getting back into rock and roll and such, end of quote. And the J Geils Band, they were more than ready to rock. After 14 years of just grinding it out on the road, they'd finally found their overnight success, which took over a decade. And no song gets more credit for their newfound mainstream success than the album's first single, Centerfold. Said Wolf, there's that old saying that if you just hang around and hang around, somehow your number's bound to come up. Apparently, Centerfold was the number that everyone had been waiting for, and it would go to #1. If there was any song that epitomized the J Geils Band of the 80s, it was Centerfold. From its opening notes to its insanely catchy sing-along chorus. I mean, that's it. Game over. There's no turning back. If this energetic piece of power pop gets lodged in your brain, if you just hear it one time, you're singing it for days. This is one of those songs that I don't care who you are. I don't care what age you were when you heard it, when you first heard it. You just knew it would be a #1 hit. It's a no doubt about it #1 hit. All the little touches in the song, from the na-na refrain to that false ending where they count it off before the band comes roaring back in. They make for total crowd pleasers. I mean, yeah, sure, the band had flirted with pop in the past, but Centerfold fully embraced this genre. Written by Seth Justman, who wrote or co-wrote all the tracks for the Freeze Frame record, including the title track. This new synth approach was reminiscent of the Cars and other early synth rockers. I like the night, baby. Rock meets new wave. No doubt that it was just what they needed. Sorry, I had to say that. And it's not like they were just jumping on the new wave bandwagon. Actually, it was a sound they had wanted to explore much earlier in their career. But according to Justman, they just couldn't afford to. Find out why after we mention our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Right now at Zenni.com, you can get a complete pair of prescription glasses customized by you, starting at just $6.95. You can also add amazing features like blue blocks to protect your eyes from digital blue light. You got to check it out today at Zenni.com. So he insisted that the reason you don't hear much synthesizer on the J Geils Band's earlier albums is simply because they couldn't afford the equipment. Apparently, the band was trapped in a vicious record company debt cycle, constantly owing the label money despite their success. Actually, it wasn't until the early 80s that they were finally able to break free from that. It's just a sad story repeated again and again throughout the history of rock and roll. So it seems like this touch of synth was enough to start turning some heads in the 80s. But honestly, heads were turning for another reason as well. Centerfold's edgy subject matter, should we say. In the song, Wolf sings about a girl that he had a high school crush on, but he was too shy to approach her at the time. He would always turn away before his homeroom angel caught his eye, as he says, homeroom angel. I think that's a great lyric. My homeroom angel always pulled me from my seat. But years later, he discovers this sweet, innocent girl is now the centerfold in a girly magazine. No longer that girl in a fuzzy sweater he used to, dream about. His world is completely rocked when he sees her in a negligee. In his words, it is really just too much.
To see her in that negligee is really just too much.
Dumbstruck, he's not sure how he feels about this new version of his Homeroom Angel. He sings, "My blood runs cold, my memory has just been sold." The question for him is, what has happened to his teenage fantasy, the fantasy of his love? It's this loss of innocence that makes up the crux of the song, but it's his conflicted emotions that really make it interesting. Ultimately, he recognizes that this is not some storybook romance. Both versions of this girl constitute some form of fantasy. It's okay, I understand, this ain't no Neverland.
It's okay, I understand. This ain't no Neverland.
Not that he's ready to let go. Clearly he's not over, but as the song closes out with another round of na-na-na-na-na-nas, the one thing that we can be certain of is that nothing about this song was ever real. Centerfold definitely flirts with some risqué subject matter, which might have been enough to get the song banned from mainstream radio at the time, but I think because the band didn't take the situation too seriously and they kept it really light, it did become a staple on the airwaves. I mean, it was heard everywhere. In fact, Wolf's interpretation of Justman's lyric is more like a Saturday morning cartoon caricature than anything else. It's just an upbeat blast of lively, energetic 80s fun. Now, Centerfold entered the Hot 100 at number 70 on November 7th, 1981, and it was at the top of the chart just 13 weeks later. Stayed at number 1 for 6 weeks, and it sent Freeze Frame the album to the top of the charts as well. Internationally, Centerfold reached number 13 in Germany, number 5 in New Zealand, number 4 in Switzerland and the Netherlands, number 3 in South Africa and the UK, and it went to number 2 in Belgium and Ireland. It also went to number 1 in Australia and Canada, so it was a worldwide hit. So not only was Centerfold J Geils Band's biggest hit, it also earned him a spot touring with the Rolling Stones and on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. It also found itself in heavy rotation on MTV as well. There's no doubt the music video heightened the popularity of this song. Directed by Seth Justman's brother Paul, the video shows the band playing in a classroom surrounded by girls wearing a variety of provocative outfits, at least for the 80s. And yet at the same time, it's really campy. Yeah, sure, Peter Wolf is strutting around, maybe having too much of a good time with his team of textbook-toting dancers, if you will. But it's clear this isn't anything more than a ridiculous teenage fantasy set to some carefree party music, which was pretty much the defining aspect of the 80s music video.
What do you want to do with your life?
I want to rock.
But just like the song, the video never takes itself too seriously. Like much of the carefree 80s. As far as the critical response to the song went, some critics complained that the J Geils Band sold out their traditional blues sound and started pandering to the rock crowd. But Wolf disagreed. We were always a rock and roll band. We just had blues and R&B roots, but we never said we were a blues band. I mean, after all, they did drop the word blues from the original name a long time before that. Critics always have to have something to complain about. Since his early 80s heyday, Centerfold has appeared in a lot of movies and TV shows, including Third Rock from the Sun, King of Queens, Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle.
I forgot my point.
My Name is Earl, The Office, The Watch, Grown Ups 2, The Goldbergs.
The 80s. It was the age of E.T., Mr. T, and MTV.
Glee, The Orville, and AP Bio.
Now, ready? Scream, scream. Ah!
It's just one of those 80s songs that everybody nabs. Centerfold has also been covered by Kid Rock. Let's go! Bruce Hornsby did it. Local H, Billy Joel did it. And Blake Shelton. I was just thinking about it today. When I was in high school, remember a local radio station did a Weird Al style parody of this song it's actually when LaToya Jackson appeared in Playboy. It was called LaToya is the Centerfold. The guy did a solid Michael Jackson impersonation. It's really funny. Freeze Frame produced 2 more singles, with the title track peaking at number 4, another great song. And Angel in Blue, that stalled at number 40, but it was a top 40 hit. The album itself followed the lead of Centerfold, spending 4 weeks at number 1, as I said, although Wolf would admit its success wasn't by design at all. He said, "I don't think the J Geils Band's whole goal was to have a number 1 record. It was to make a good rock and roll record and have some excitement. The charts tend to make people focus on 1, 2, 3, and 4. Anyone who feels that kind of achievement isn't going to solve anything, and they're in for a disappointment. But it's something you're glad happens. Being number 1 is an exciting thing. It was a great sense of accomplishment after all that we'd been through," end of quote. From there, the group followed up Freeze Frame with a live album called Showtime that dropped in '82. That captured the electric onstage presence of J Geils Band. A live version of Monkey Island's I Do was released as a single. That went to number 24 on the Hot 100. However, by the fall of '83, Peter Wolf left the band. It's actually midway through a recording session, no less. The lead singer left over disagreements about the group's musical direction. Years later, Wood would say, "I did not want to leave the band, but the majority of the band wanted to move in another direction. They wanted to continue in a pop techno way, and it was not my thing." Working with writer and producer Michael Johnson, Wolf released a solo album, Lights Out, in 1984, releasing the title track as a single. As for the J Geils Band, they carried on with Seth Justman as lead singer. They released one last album, You're Getting Even While I'm Getting Odd. That came out in the fall of 1984. Didn't make a lot of noise, and his lead single, Concealed Weapons, that only reached number 63. So unsure of its direction, the J Geils Band disbanded in 1985, the next year. However, J Geils and Magic Dick would reunite in the early 90s to form the blues outfit Blues Time. Then in 1999, the J Geils Band reunited with Wolf for a 13-date tour. Of course, other reunions would follow after that. And sadly, in 2017, John Warren Giles Jr. was found dead in his apartment in Massachusetts. He was 71 years old. You know, the J Geils Band has one of the strangest careers of the era. The early version of the band was really respected by critics, hard-working band. Then they had this 2-year period where they were at the top of the charts. And just when they had their breakthrough, they seemed to break down. And this song was so big when I was a kid. I was about 7 when it topped the charts, and it was my favorite song. I would whistle it all day long, sing it to myself. One day I was sitting in church with all the little kids, and the chorister was going around asking all these little kids, what our favorite hymn or religious song was. Well, it was my turn, and I answered matter-of-factly, Centerfold. The chorister looked at me in confusion and said, I don't think I've heard of that song. What did you say? I started singing it. My blood runs cold. My memory has just been sold. My angel is a centerfold. Angel is a centerfold. To the absolute horror of this poor woman. Before I could get any further in the song, she shut me right up. She grabbed my hand, pulled me out of the class. She took me to my dad, who was in a meeting somewhere in the church. Later, my dad sat me down and he asked me to sing what I had sung in church. As soon as I got a few words out, my dad knew exactly what I was singing. And he asked me, do you know what this song means? And I said, I don't think so. So from there, he took the time to explain it, which was pretty funny in and of itself. So after I understood, he said, it's a really catchy song, and I know you love to sing it, but let's just remember not to sing it at church. To this day, I think of that whenever I hear the song. I mean, my dad was so patient explaining it to me. It's just so cool. Love Centerfold. Leave us a comment about the J Geils Band and Centerfold. What do you remember about the song? What are your memories of when it was making its way at the top of the charts and of the album Freeze Frame and all of that? Let's have a great discussion. Did you ever sing a risque song somewhere where you shouldn't? I did it a couple of times. I did it with Do You Think I'm Sexy as well, Rod Stewart, in the middle of church, actually. Anyway, if you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe below to be an instant part or a prominent part of our channel here. And until next time, 3 chords, yeah, the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.